You've seen the claims. Eat almost no carbs some days, load up on carbs other days, and your body supposedly burns fat faster than it would on a normal diet. Carb cycling has a devoted following in fitness circles, but the actual evidence for why it works is a lot thinner than the hype suggests. Let's start with what carb cycling actually is. It means deliberately varying your carbohydrate intake across different days of the week, instead of eating roughly the same amount of carbs every day. A typical structure alternates 2 to 3 low carb days with 1 to 2 higher carb days, while keeping protein relatively constant and adjusting fat intake in the opposite direction of carbs. The appeal is straightforward on paper. Low carb days are supposed to keep insulin low and encourage the body to tap into fat stores, while high carb days are supposed to refill muscle glycogen, support training performance, and prevent the metabolic slowdown that can come with sustained calorie restriction. It's worth being clear about what carb cycling is not. It's not a specific diet with one fixed set of numbers. It's a scheduling strategy that can be layered on top of almost any calorie target. That flexibility is part of why it gets marketed so heavily. Now here's where the marketing and the evidence diverge sharply. When researchers compare carb cycling against a standard diet with the same total weekly calories and protein, the two approaches produce statistically similar fat loss and lean mass outcomes. The body doesn't track carbohydrate timing on a day-by-day basis the way the theory implies. It responds to total energy balance and total protein intake accumulated over time. This lines up with the broader body of nutrient timing research. A widely cited review examined the popular claim that when you eat matters more than how much you eat overall, and found that total daily intake consistently outweighs timing once it's actually put to the test. The proposed hormonal mechanisms don't hold up particularly well under scrutiny either. Insulin does drop on low carb days and rise on high carb days, but insulin fluctuating within a normal daily range isn't the same as insulin being a barrier to fat loss. None of this means carb cycling is harmful or pointless. It means the fat loss advantage claimed by most carb cycling marketing doesn't show up in controlled research once total calories and protein are accounted for. So where does carb cycling actually help? A few legitimate, evidence-supported reasons exist. First, performance on hard training days. Aligning higher carb intake with your most intense training sessions genuinely does support better glycogen availability and performance output during that session. This isn't a fat loss mechanism, it's a training quality mechanism. But better training sessions over months can indirectly support better body composition outcomes. Second, adherence for people who struggle with constant restriction. Some people find a strict, unchanging low-carb diet mentally exhausting, and having a scheduled higher carb day to look forward to improves their ability to stick with the overall plan. Since diet adherence over months matters more than any single day's macronutrient split, this psychological benefit can translate into real results. Third, athletes with genuinely variable training loads. Someone with a heavy leg day, a light recovery day, and a rest day within the same week has a legitimate physiological reason to eat differently on each of those days, independent of any fat loss claims. Now let's talk about who should be cautious or skip it entirely. Beginners still building basic nutrition habits get more value from mastering simple, consistent calorie and protein targets before adding a rotating carb schedule on top. People with diabetes or blood sugar conditions should only attempt carb cycling under medical supervision, since deliberately swinging carbohydrate intake day to day can affect blood sugar stability. Anyone with a history of disordered eating should be especially careful, since a structure built around alternating restriction and permission days can reinforce a restrict then overeat pattern. And people who dislike meal planning may find the extra layer of tracking more likely to cause them to quit than to help. If you decide carb cycling fits your situation, here's how to structure it correctly. Set your total weekly calories first. Decide on your overall weekly calorie target based on your goal, then distribute carbs unevenly across days while keeping the weekly total consistent with that target. Keep protein constant every day. Protein should not be the macronutrient you're cycling. Hold it steady across low carb and high carb days alike, since consistent protein intake is what actually protects lean mass during a fat loss phase. Match high carb days to your hardest training days. If you train legs on Monday and rest on Tuesday, Monday is the more logical day for higher carbs, both for performance and because your body will use that glycogen more directly. Adjust fat inversely with carbs. On low carb days, fat intake typically rises to help meet your calorie target. On high carb days, fat intake typically drops. and give it at least 3 to 4 weeks before judging results. Because the fat loss mechanism is really just the weekly calorie deficit, results take the same amount of time to show up as they would on any other diet structure. Let's cover a few common mistakes that undercut carb cycling. Treating high carb days as free days is the biggest one. Letting the higher carb day drift into a genuine calorie surplus rather than a planned moderate increase within the weekly target is responsible for more stalled progress than almost anything else associated with carb cycling. Cycling protein along with carbs is another mistake. Some people mistakenly cut protein on low carb days too, which undermines muscle retention precisely when it matters most. Ignoring total weekly calories entirely turns carb cycling into guesswork rather than a structured strategy. And expecting a metabolic advantage that isn't there sets an unrealistic bar the approach was never going to clear. Carb cycling doesn't burn fat faster than a matched calorie standard diet. The research is fairly consistent on that point. What it does offer is a way to align carbohydrate intake with training demands, and, for some people, a psychological structure that makes sustained calorie control easier to stick with. If you're an athlete with genuinely variable training days, or someone who finds flat daily restriction hard to sustain, carb cycling is a reasonable tool. If you're looking for it to outperform a well-run calorie deficit on its own, the evidence says it won't, and your time is better spent nailing consistency with whatever eating pattern you can actually sustain. Full breakdown with exact carb targets and a complete mistake checklist is linked below.